By 8:02 that morning, Diane Castellano would learn something about a man she had walked past in silence for 6 years. At 7:40, she didn't even know his name. The branch was still dark when she let herself in through the side door. Heels sharp against the marble floor, a coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through numbers she already knew by heart. First Meridian Regional had spent 11 months courting the Feld account. Marcus Feld, developer of 3 shopping centers and a downtown mixed-use tower, was due at 8:15 to sign a loan large enough to define this branch's entire quarter. Diane had been named VP of Branch Operations 4 months earlier, the youngest in the region's history, and everyone above her had made it clear, in the careful language executives use, that this meeting would decide whether the title stuck or slipped away. She hadn't slept well. She rarely did anymore. There was a specific kind of exhaustion that came from being new enough to feel every eye in the room and senior enough that no one was allowed to see her sweat, and Diane had learned to carry both at once, chin level, no visible cracks. Walter Combs was sweeping the lobby floor when she walked in. He always was at that hour. 64 years old, broad through the shoulders in a way that had softened but never disappeared. Silver hair kept short beneath a Navy security cap. A brass tag on his chest reading W. Combs in letters gone dull from 2 decades of identical uniforms replacing identical uniforms. He nodded as she passed. "Morning," he said, the way he said it to everyone, whether they answered or not. She didn't answer. Not cruelty, just the particular blindness of someone moving fast towards something that mattered. Past something that to her apparently did not. Walter had called this branch his own. In the quiet way, a man can belong to a building without owning any piece of it. Since before the lobby floor was marble, back when he was 29, an operations engineer with steady hands and a mechanical engineering degree, helping install the vault that still anchored the building's back room. He remembered the manufacturer's technician handing him the manual override schematics and joking that one day, when the computers failed, someone would need an old man who still understood a lock without a battery in it. Walter had laughed at the time. He didn't laugh much about it anymore, though he never let that show. 3 decades ago, during a merger and a downturn that gutted half the operations staff, a regional director had told him in a conference room, without quite meeting his eyes, that his engineering role was being restructured, and that security was the only opening left if he wanted to stay. He had a mortgage. He had a daughter starting college that fall. He took the uniform. For a few years, he told himself it was temporary. Then he stopped, because it had stopped being useful to. Before we continue, if you believe that dignity has no job title and grace wears no uniform, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. At 8:02, the branch manager pulled Diane aside with the urgency of a man delivering news he hadn't caused. The vault's electronic locking system, installed 4 years earlier at a cost that dwarfed Walter's entire career salary, had failed overnight, a firmware update gone wrong. The technician kept repeating on the phone, apologetic and useless in equal measure. The vault held every document Feld needed to sign in 13 minutes. Support couldn't reach the branch for 2 hours. The regional on-call tech was stuck in traffic 40 minutes out. Diane felt the morning tilt beneath her. "There's a manual override," she said, already bracing for disappointment. "There has to be." "There is," the branch manager said. "Nobody currently on staff has ever used it. The documentation predates the current system, and the upgrade paperwork doesn't reference the old mechanism at all. It's like it stopped existing." Diane stood in the middle of the lobby watching 11 months of work collapse. And it was then, scanning the room for anyone who could fix what she couldn't, that her eyes landed, truly landed, for the first time in 6 years, on the man sweeping near the front doors. Walter. She said his name like she was reading it off his tag because she was. He looked up. "Yes, ma'am. Do you know anything about the old vault system? The mechanical one, before the upgrade?" For a moment, he said nothing. Something crossed his face Diane didn't yet have the context to read. Not pride, exactly. Not vindication either, something quieter and older than both. The stillness of a man who has spent 30 years being asked whether he could carry boxes, and for the first time in a long while, being asked whether he could think. "I installed it," he said. Marcus Feld's car pulled into the lot at 8:11. Diane had 4 minutes. "Show me," she said. Walter set his broom down carefully, the way a man sets down something he intends to return to, and walked toward the vault with a steadiness that made the branch manager step aside without being asked. He knelt in front of the reinforced door, fingers finding a service panel most employees didn't know existed, murmuring numbers and half-remembered sequences to himself, the way old songs come back the moment you hear the first 3 notes. Diane crouched beside him, close enough to see his hands weren't shaking at all. "It's been 30 years, she said, unable to help herself. "You remember a combination from 30 years ago?" Walter didn't look up. "I remember the day I said it," he said. "I don't forget things I built." There was nothing bitter in how he said it, and nothing performed either, just flat and true. And something small and uncomfortable settled in Diane's chest, something with no name yet. Made of every morning she'd walked past him and left his morning hanging unanswered in the air. The mechanism resisted. A gear had seized somewhere behind 30 years of disuse. And for nearly 90 seconds, nothing happened except the sound of Walter's slow, even breathing, and the buzz of Diane's phone against her hip, a text from the front desk that Marcus Feld had just walked in. Then something clicked. Then something else. The vault door sighed open on its own weight. The room exhaled all at once. The branch manager laughed, short and disbelieving. Diane stood frozen a moment longer than the moment required, staring at the open vault, at the folder of documents sitting exactly where they needed to be, at the man in the security uniform rising slowly and brushing dust from his knees like it was nothing at all. "Thank you," she said, and heard how small the words sounded against what he'd just done. Walter only nodded. "Happy to help, ma'am." He picked his broom back up. Marcus Feld signed the loan at 8:31. The meeting that had haunted Diane's sleep for 11 months lasted 22 minutes and went, by every measure that mattered to the people above her, perfectly. But it wasn't the signature that stayed with her. It was the sight of Walter Combs sweeping the same stretch of floor an hour later, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just saved a year of her career with hands that remembered a machine no one else in the building had ever thought to ask about. That afternoon, Diane pulled his personnel file. It took 20 minutes to find, filed under a job title that no longer existed, Operations Engineer 2, W. Combs, reassigned 1994, restructuring. No note explaining why. There rarely is. She found him in the break room before his shift ended. She hadn't rehearsed what to say, which was unusual for her, and it came out plainer than intended. "I read your file," she said. "You were an engineer here. A good one, from what I can tell. Nobody ever gave you the chance to be that again." Walter was quiet a moment. Didn't seem like there was a version of that conversation where anyone was listening. He said, not unkindly, just honest. "So I stopped starting it." "I'm starting it," Diane said, "if you want it." What followed over the next several months was no grand gesture, and Walter would have distrusted it if it had been. Diane petitioned the regional office to create a facilities and systems consultant role, part engineering, part institutional memory, the kind of position that exists in every organization only in the gap between what's written down and what one person happens to still remember. She fought for back pay the union contract, it turned out, had technically owed him for years. Walter kept his uniform at his own request for another 8 months until the day he finally retired on his own terms instead of someone else's, with a small send-off in the same lobby where he'd swept the floor every morning for 3 decades, standing this time not by the door, but at the center of the room. He still comes in sometimes. On no particular schedule, just to see the place. Staff too new to know the story assume he's a retired regular who likes the coffee. The ones who were there that morning know better. They know to say good morning, and to wait for him to say it back. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human moments that change everything. And tell us in the comments, has there ever been someone in your life you walked past every day without knowing what they were truly capable of?